Steve Dotto here. How the heck y'all doing this fine day? And welcome to Webinar Wednesday. April, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you? Webinar Wednesday's here, and it's St. Patrick's Day.
It is. Happy St. Patrick's Day to you. You're wearing green. I would put on green. That's good. Are you? Do you have any Irish blood in you?
Are you Irish?
I'm part Irish.
Actually have my grandma Terrell, rest her soul, is a diehard. They're from Ireland, and she crocheted everybody little lucky shamrocks. It's hard to tell it's a shamrock, but so yes. So this was her favorite day. Big family dinner day.
Yeah. My maternal grandmother was actually one of the orphans from the potato famine. And she came to Canada, and she was kind of like almost slave labor to farmers in Saskatchewan. They sent a lot of these children over that were orphaned, and they ended up working very, very hard in the fields. And they were not really happy people. They didn't have a happy childhood. But that was my maternal grandmother. That's how she got here.
So. And what was her last name? I'm always interested in last names.
I don't know what her maiden name was. Her married name was Golding. I should probably know what her maiden name was, but that's way too much detail. Way too much detail. So how the heck is everybody doing this fine day? We've got a kind of a really niche topic this week that I thought we would be talking about, which is finding a job and employment in the year 2021. And as I did the research, it's so different than it's been a long time since I've applied for a job, but it's so different today than it was when we were coming up. And there's so many different kind of. Are
you going to say when we were kids?
Shush.
Go on. You knew that's what you were going to say.
I was not. I was not going to say that. Okay. But it has profoundly changed. It's very, very different. But it's also near and dear to my heart right now because I'm in the middle of working on a book with our friend Bob Poole, and we're working on a book called, which is designed to teach baby boomers that are recently unemployed how to do this process. So one of the things that we'll ask is if any of you have really interesting stories around your experiences re-entering the job market after many, many years of being in a single job, drop us a note. Just let us know. Just send us a note to info@dottotech.com. And we're looking for some good anecdotal stories to add to the book. So we will be so we're interested to hear from you if you happen to have some stories. So today's video is about 26 minutes, I think. It's we're going to be covering obviously finding a job in 2021. We've got lots of great feedback from we'll get to the feedback as soon as we're done. How are we doing for people on board? It looks like we're on board. Everybody's kind of getting into the room. Our tech is working this week.
So we don't want to forget our patrons.
Knock on wood. Oh, that's right. Thank you for reminding me. Dotto Tech is brought to you through the generosity of our patrons at Patreon. We are a community-funded channel here. How we're able to deliver these free trainings week after week. This is number 164 of our weekly tutorials that we do here on Dotto Tech. The reason we're able to do that is we are generously supported through many of you through the crowdfunding site Patreon. What happens is the deal is you visit patreon.com/dottotech. You commit to give us $10 a month, and for that, we stay on the air delivering this great content, and you get some perks, and the perks be awesome. The perks include access to all of the webinar replays. As we say, this is the 164th of these webinars we've done. Every one of them is available to our patrons in replay mode. The rest of you, the people who are not our patrons, you get to watch it for free live. You get to watch it for a week after we go live, but then after that, we archive it, and we take it from public sharing, and we archive it for our patrons. They also get half price on some of our courses and some other nice little perks, but the biggest thing is, the main thing is Webinar Wednesday, is the access to the Webinar Wednesday replays. So thank you so much to all of you. I'm sure looking forward to being able to see them face to face at some point in the not too distant future again, going to events and things like that.
I feel like it's getting closer. It's getting a little bit closer.
Yeah. One step at a time. All right. I think we're gonna. So let's jump into the video. The video, as I say, about 26 minutes, as per our tradition, we will be, April and I will be in chat answering as many of your questions as we can. When we come back, we will do a Q&A. We'll answer many questions live. We'll keep it to an hour. So let's jump in, and we'll see you on the other side of the video. A timely topic for this day and age, finding a job in 2021. And a lot has changed, not just because things were changing in the job market anyways pre-pandemic, but as we are in hopefully the end of the pandemic, as we can see the end of it, it has caused other massive shifts in the workplace, and that affects, of course, the process of getting a job. It also affects the process of hiring people in the way that we hire people. So we have a lot of things to unlearn. Today's show is going to be a lot about unlearning the old way of doing things so that you can clear the path for the newer way of doing things in 2021, if you happen to be looking for a job. So let us dive into it. I hope there's a lot of value today. And we'd be remiss if we didn't start out with a nod to our Irish friends. I have a substantial percentage of my heritage is Irish and Italian. So happy St. Patrick's Day to one and all. All right, our agenda today. We're going to talk about the old way and the new way of doing things. We're going to refer back to what a lot of us recognize is how we found our jobs in the past, and maybe how we still think you go about looking for work if you happen to be in that space. Getting your ducks in a row, making sure that you're doing the right things, and there's some new kind of minefields that we have to see our way through as we're looking for jobs today. So we'll be talking about those. Where to look for jobs and what to do when you find a place that you want to work. And also, it might be time for a rethink on some of the things that you're looking at. If you are in the position that you are looking for work now, if you have the luxury of not being panicked into having to find a job, maybe a little bit of internal reflection and some consideration might be worth having at this point. And even if you are employed, I think the kind of reflection that I'm going to be talking about will be healthy. Are we closing in on the end? Are we closer to the end of the pandemic than the beginning? I'd like to think so. As we come out, I'm going to start with something that's kind of heavy. We've historically, if you're hunting for a job, we've historically looked for job opportunities. That's the thought process that you and I have gone through as we're out there, for the most part. Some of you might not be, but for the most part, as we're out there looking for a job, we're looking for opportunities. And then we're seeing how well we fit with those opportunities. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's historically the way we've done things. But maybe this is a time to hit the reset button. And instead of looking for opportunities first, maybe it's a really healthy thing to look at what we want to do. What do we find fulfillment in first? And then find the job that satisfies us instead of looking for the job that we satisfy. We've got to come out of this with more wisdom somehow. We've got to come out of this time that we've been in with a little bit more wisdom somehow. And I'm not sure this is the time, and I'm not sure this is the thing, but I like the sound of this. If you are telling me that you're reevaluating your future and you're looking for fulfillment first and the opportunity after you determine what it is that's going to fulfill you, I would say good on you. And if a friend says it to you, I bet you would say good on you as well. So as we go through this process, let's think about that as well. And it's an entirely different conversation about finding fulfillment. I'm probably not the person to lead that. I'm much better in the technical side. But thinking about that is a really healthy way to approach this entire topic, I believe. So let's give ourselves points for self-awareness. We're going to talk about three options today. We're going to talk about the old school job market. That's still out there, but there are some new avenues to get those old school jobs. And then there's the emergence of this gig economy, which we've heard so much about, which is held up as this panacea in many cases. It's looked at, I think, by most people as a good thing. I'm not necessarily in that camp. I respect what the gig economy can do, but I think we have to pump the brakes a little bit on our excitement about the gig economy. I'll be talking about it, and I'll be talking about how you can protect yourself and leverage it as we go through today. And then finally, my favorite kind of the relatively recent evolutionary job opportunity is the side hustle. How many of us are starting to find fulfillment and employment and the revenue off the side of our desk, doing things that are outside of our normal 9 to 5 employment, and often building that side hustle into a full-time gig. And what I was talking about fulfillment earlier on, often it fulfills that side of the equation because you start it as a passion project and it continues on. And then when you can make a living from your passion project, you are indeed blessed in this day and age. So let's start with a conversation about the old way and the new way of doing things. Of course, you and I all know that, the way that we used to get if we found ourselves on the street looking for a job, we'd prepare that paper resume, we'd get it written, we'd spend some time on that, we'd get our best clothes on, and we'd start going around, knocking on doors, making phone calls to friends, leveraging our network, looking in the paper, signing up for employment agencies, whatever we could do to find that opportunity. And a lot of those things still kind of work, but of course there's newer and better ways of doing them. The first is, I think the most important is, regardless if you're employed or if you are in the unemployment space, is I would dust off LinkedIn. And I am not the biggest user of LinkedIn. I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of LinkedIn as a network, but recognizing that LinkedIn is the place that people meet for business. That is the place that they go for business. It's so different than Facebook and Instagram that it is, people are looking for your professional input and to see how you and to connect with you for the purpose of business on LinkedIn. So I always kind of thought of LinkedIn as the place that you might go when if we're talking about the employment side of LinkedIn, the place that you go once you are unemployed in order to help you find a job. And I kind of shortchanged LinkedIn at that point because I shortchanged the value of our network. Networks are something that you have to nurture and you have to maintain. You have to maintain relationships with your community. So regardless especially if you're employed now, but at some point you might not be, or you might be looking to change employment, LinkedIn is a place that you build that network kind of in an altruistic perspective at the beginning. You just should be part of that community, contributing to it, getting to know people, nurturing it so that it is a well-oiled machine, so that you suddenly don't just appear when you need something from that community, but instead you have been participating in that community from the get-go, and so that when you do have needs, you have equity built up in the community. I didn't really think about LinkedIn a lot myself that way until I started to, dive into this whole job hunting aspect and looking at it from looking for a job. Partially because I guess I haven't looked for a job personally in a very long time. But looking at it from that perspective now, I've gained a new level of respect for LinkedIn based on kind of these criteria. So the first thing that you got to do, I think, regardless if you're looking for a job or not, if you're in business, I would spend some time and tune up my LinkedIn connections and make sure that I am participating and kind of fulfilling what LinkedIn can bring to us as far as engagement and relationships goes. Because that one thing that hasn't changed in the job market is your network is your most valuable asset. Where your network lives now is not necessarily in a phone book or even in your smartphone anymore. It's often in LinkedIn, in a social platform like LinkedIn. So that's the first thing that I would begin with. Now, interestingly, LinkedIn also recognizes this, of course. They've always been pretty good at, they've got tools that are designed for headhunters and tools that are designed to help you find employment and to share that you're interested in employment. But now they're starting to push that downstream a little bit and get into the gig economy as well, where they're starting to create job boards that people can post that they're available for temporary work for gigs and the like. So LinkedIn will just continue to grow in importance. Now, the other places that you're going to go look is just the search online. If you are looking for a job, you already have your favorite job sites. For example, Indeed.com is one of the most popular, and I guess the 800-pound gorilla sitting in the corner as far as job sites goes. But you can go and you can find often regional sites, often supported by government agencies, such as these ones that I have here. I just did a quick search here in Canada, and I found services for both employees and employers from some different levels, some provincial and some federal here in Canada, that help identify and help put people together with the job opportunities that are out there. So don't ignore your government and your kind of the official channels in any place you are. But one of my favorite ways I think that you should be looking for jobs is surprisingly doing very simple Google searches. If you go to a company website, let's just go to TELUS, which is a Western Canadian company here. Almost every company, from Apple to TELUS, everybody else, down at the bottom of their website, somewhere here in this area down here at the very bottom, you're going to find employment or careers or jobs at. Here's careers at TELUS. You go in here, and they kind of give you an overview of what employment at that company looks like. And then you can explore the different opportunities. If you want to get into sales and marketing at TELUS, you can go here and we can do a search for available positions. There we go, search for open positions. And you can browse through and have a look at all of the different jobs that are available. And I got to say, the quick little bit of research that I've done, most companies have a fair number of openings available right now. I don't know for sure, but it seems to me to be a buyer's market. It seems to me that there's a lot of job opportunities out there. You can also just do a straight up search. Type in jobs at Tesla and immediately brought to a site where you can find out about careers at Tesla if you happen to want to work at Tesla. And this, again, scroll down through it. Once you go through the process, where is it here? There's a place here. There is search all jobs. It was right at the top. I didn't have to search down. But have a look. Now it's looking regionally because I'm coming from Canada. It's listing jobs here in Canada. But you're going through and you're finding lots and lots of different opportunities that you can consider. So for full-time employment, this is definitely a process that you're going to go through. But let me now, if we're going to be using the internet to find job opportunities, unfortunately, it means that we're also going to be applying for those jobs through the internet. And that means, for the most part, that things have changed. One of the most dramatic way things have changed in the job market is your resume is not going to be read by a person, more than likely. And not at the beginning, not at the screening process. When you first enter and fill in, they might have an application form that you fill in. Often they will, or they'll ask you to submit a paper resume. But that's going to be often screened by the machine. An algorithm is going to scan through your application looking to find the most relevant applicants before a human being touches them. So this changes the way that we use our resume, and it changes the way about how we think about presenting ourselves. Now, in the past, we used to really work at crafting our resumes so that we intrigued the person reading at the other end, so they caught a taste of who we are. Today, writing a resume is much more like creating a search engine friendly blog post. You're going to be looking for keywords within the job description, and you're going to make sure that you put those keywords into your application so that the machine will see that you have that you kind of hit the different criteria that they're looking for as it searches, so that you then get the opportunity to do the interview, where we again go to our interpersonal skills and talking to a human being. I think that's a thing that a lot of us don't necessarily understand or wouldn't have thought about as we're in the job hunting market. We would think the resume is still very important, but important now because it's being read differently, it's being consumed differently. So recognizing that, I believe that that's going to give you a big leg up. And the cool thing about this now is, because of how much access we have to all of the different jobs, you're no longer walking up and down the street, going and knocking on doors, asking if they're accepting resumes. But instead, you're actually being able to do searches, and you can apply to a lot more jobs a lot more quickly using the online technology. Of course, there's the other side of that coin, is they're going to be filtering many, many more people in each job. So there's a bit of a balance, I believe, happening there. But it's still a slightly different process than what we used to do before. And if I had to choose a process, I would choose this one over the old school way personally. I think that this just works better. Plus, again, if we go back to what I said right at the beginning, of if you're going to look for where you find fulfillment first, This way here, you can target a lot more the type of job that is actually going to resonate with you instead of just the opportunity, because you can filter through so many more opportunities this way as well. There is another consideration that you need to do as you go through this process, and that is the first thing when a human being touches your resume and looks at it that they are going to do before they do an interview with you is they are going to search for you on Google. They're going to go into Google, and they're going to go into Facebook, and they're going to go into all the social platforms. If they're seriously considering you, they're going to try and find out about you before they ever meet you. Think about it. You will do it. I will do it. Why wouldn't they do it? So have you done it to yourself? Have you gone through your resume? Have you searched it, typed in your name, and seen what comes up with search for you? And this starts to speak to how we present ourselves in different social platforms. What we've just come through with the just all the vitriol and the hate that's been going on in the online space. A lot of us have posted things online that we're probably not proud of today. And I would definitely go through and I would scrub as much of that from the internet as I possibly could. They're going to be looking at your Facebook profile, anything that's public. They're going to be looking at what you've said in Twitter or what you've posted in Instagram. Anything that you have public out there, they will search. So if you have a bunch of pictures of you boozing it up with your buddies, you might think twice about keeping those pictures public as you are looking for a job. Not that there's anything wrong with partying with your friends, but you have to recognize how it's going to land when somebody looks at it and sees it, who doesn't know you. It might leave the impression that you're just a party person and that's not somebody that they are interested in hiring. Or if they find a thread where you are being incredibly argumentative with people and very, very entrenched in a one side of a argument, which is so easy to happen in the social platforms, again, that's going to color their opinion, and you might never get to the resume. You might, to the job interview. So you have to spend time considering that as well. So go through and clean up social wherever you can. And from this point forward, you'll think twice about just how willing you are to engage in a little more, shall we say, aggressive conversations happening online. I think it's cost a lot more people than will ever know about it, their job. If you get through all of that process, hopefully you're hired into a traditional job. So lots of things have changed in the traditional job market, but lots of things are still the same. I mean, you still need the skills, and it's still going to come down to probably you in an interview to get the job. Now, when I said that early on that we could consider looking for fulfillment instead, we could also consider looking for other options that aren't traditional I'm your employee, you're my employer relationships as in 2021. And this has probably is one area where the pandemic has changed things more than anything else. The gig economy was exploding before the pandemic hit, but today it is that much bigger. So what is the gig economy? The gig economy is when you're being hired for short-term projects. You're being hired to do a gig. You're being hired for a few hours at a time, and there's no long-term relationship, and it's a straight-up equal exchange of time for money for the most part, or something that you create for them for money. It's based on that, and there's no long-term relationship with the company or the firm. Now, I've got some concerns about it. The gig economy, no doubt, has been wonderful. It gives us a lot of opportunities in places we've never had opportunities before. So there's a lot to be said for the gig economy. But I think we should also speak to what the gig economy can be doing, especially to those of us who are in my demographic, in the baby boomers and Gen Xers. As we get pushed out of the workplace, as more and more older workers are being marginalized and pushed out of the workplace because they're too expensive or because a variety of different reasons. A lot of them who don't want to engage again in full-time employment look to the gig economy to stay busy, maybe to make a little bit of extra revenue, to remain relevant, lots of different reasons that they look to gigs. And so they start, once they've left their full-time employment, they start looking for gigs. And sometimes they end up in the right path, but sometimes they end up in a path which I find frankly disturbing, which is a lot of the world sees gig workers as less valuable, and consequently they can be paid less. I think we are looked at, especially baby boomers that are coming into the gig economy, are looked at by much of that economy as almost, immigrant farm workers, that ones that you can bring in for a task, pay poorly if you can get away with it, if the laws in the land allow you to get away with it, and then discard them when they're done and let them go. And so the respect isn't there because the long-term relationship isn't there. And the only people I think that can protect the workers from that are the workers themselves. Is if you are entering into the gig economy, pay attention to what you believe you're worth, and pay attention to how you're being treated and the offers that are being put forward. And I'm hoping that we can be in a position that we aren't chasing business because we need that paycheck. When you're in that position, of course, you're going to do whatever it takes to get that paycheck. But it would sure be great if we recognize that our value going into the gigs, and then hold to that value as you end up pricing out. And some of the skills-based sites that I'm talking about now, as far as the gig economy, definitely respect that. Once you get into places like Fiverr, which is a gig marketplace, which is, it says right up front, hire anybody for like $5. Well, exactly how much am I worth if you're paying me $5? How much respect do you have for what I'm delivering? And how much respect do I have for myself at the end of the day as well? Now, there are ways that you can leverage it and go into those that do make it worthwhile. But overarchingly, I think that the gig economy is devaluing the experience that workers bring into the marketplace and tries to get them basically as cheaply as possible. The goal of the gig economy is to get cheap labor, not necessarily to provide equity and lots of opportunity to a disenfranchised workforce. Now, there are some sites that do a poor job, as I said in Fiverr. There's also ones that do a moderately good job. Upwork is probably the most popular gig economy job, where you can either post your skills or look for people to work on your jobs. And right up front there, within Upwork, people express exactly how much they're worth, and they also disclose an awful lot of detail. Where you live will often color how much people are willing to pay. There's a perception that hiring somebody that lives in North America is a higher priced, and ergo, do I say more valuable worker than somebody living in the Ukraine or in the Philippines. So there's different kind of tiers based on your location. So there's a kind of a built-in bias that happens within Upwork, that exacerbates my concerns. So I want you to be aware of that as you're either hiring or as you are looking to position yourself within a site like Upwork. Now, there are some other skills-based sites that do gig economy work that I'm very intrigued by. We've often spoken in the past about one called Writers Access, which gives you access to copywriters and to really high quality writers. Now, there's actually an application process that the employer, that the person who's hiring people have to go through, and you pay up front to gain access to that writing community. So in that act alone, you're expressing your respect for the abilities of the people. If you're paying for access to have XYZ person write for you, you respect what they're bringing to the table. You respect the value of the work they're doing. So I like to find services like that. We've got a couple of links to those. Writers Access. There's another one that I'm working with. I'm working with a colleague on a book on looking for jobs, especially for baby boomers looking for jobs in this marketplace. And Bob found a really interesting site, the Editorial Freelancers Association, which is a community of freelance writers that have bound together. They kind of follow a common core set of principles, and they allow you to come to find good freelance editorial talent. As well, if you are a good writer, they give you the opportunity to join and to bid on incoming jobs as well. And we found some exceptional talent by going through this site. Can you hear Farley coughing away in the background? What is up, Farley? Are you okay? There we go. Got a coughing dog in the background. All right. So that's the gig economy from my perspective. Worth considering. The one that I'm most excited about, oh yeah, I had to mention your name, so you're going to come visit, are you? The one thing that's always excited me the most, for the last couple of years, is the concept of the side hustle. Now, the side hustle differs from the gig economy in the fact that with a side hustle, you're doing your own thing. It can be a part-time thing. You can be doing it off the side of your desk, but you're working on your own kind of passion project. You're building your own thing, and revenue comes a little bit slower into the side hustle, but it is relevant revenue because it's revenue that you've decided and that you own yourself. You're not working for anybody else. You're doing your own thing. You own what you invest your energy in, and you reap all of the rewards as well. So there's lots of different types of side hustles that are growing in importance and in an opportunity. We teach a lot of that in the Grey Wave. We talk a lot about building a side hustle as a way to start a business. And for many people who are employed but think at some point in the future that they are going to be marginalized, they're going to be driven out of their job, or they just want to get out of that industry and do their own thing, a side hustle is a great first step towards that. A lot has changed for us here in 2021 in both the employment and the employee space. I think we have more opportunities than ever. And I do believe that recognizing that if we can get through what we've just gotten through in the last year, that we have more opportunity than maybe we thought we had. We aren't necessarily tied to making money the way that we historically have. We are finding new ways, we're finding new skills, we're finding new opportunities, and probably for many of us, we're finding new interests and perhaps, if we're lucky enough, new passions that we can turn into those careers and find more fulfillment as well as a good job, a good paying job as we move ahead. So don't cling to the old ways. Leverage what you know from the old ways and recognize that it is an entirely new ball game today in 2021 looking for a job. Looking forward to your feedback. And that is it. So how'd I do, April?
You did good. You did good. We have a very helpful chat today.
Yes, it is. And I should also bow to your expertise on this a little bit more, and we should let people know that because you spent a lot of time coaching people and working with people's LinkedIn profiles and resumes, and so you've done a lot of research on this. And that, as a matter of fact, the Writers Access site that we talked about, that was one of your finds that you brought to us as well. So maybe you can answer more of the questions than me as we move ahead. But as always, I'm thrilled with the level of expertise and the feedback that people are giving back and forth in the comments. We've got some recruiters in here who are offering great feedback. Everybody jumped right on the scrubbing your social media story. Dan Light asked how you go about doing that. Literally, Dan, you go back into your social profiles, you delete posts that are bad, that you think might be questionable. But most importantly, in Facebook, what you would do is you would go in and you would change your sharing preferences. And you might say that only my friends can see things, and you don't allow things to be seen in public. That's something that you can do, certainly. That will set yourself up a little bit more and protect yourself. But I got to tell you, you just think about the damage that's been done to so many people's reputation with their behavior.
People don't realize. I actually have a really great story about how long things live on the internet. I had a woman in my class a few years back. She was an artist, and she was a boomer. And she came up to me after class. It was like it was a Facebook training or something. And she said, April, I really need help. She said, I can't even believe I'm actually sharing this. She's like, my son found me a picture of me on the internet. He had done a Google search of her and looked at images. And she had a boyfriend way back when she was young in her 20s that had taken a naked photo of her and put it on the internet. It's just one of those things where the internet you do have to be mindful in everything you do. It's crazy. It's crazy.
And people ask, somebody's asking, how do you, is it Elias is asking, how do you scrub Google searches about you? I don't know that you can. There was a lawsuit recently, a few years back in Spain, where the people insisted, because there was a lot of negative news reports about a certain politician or something like that, and they actually sued Google to remove those narratives from the search results. But it's not going to be that's not going to be an easy process to work your way through. So the best thing is, just pay attention going forward more than anything else. Let's so we've now the Q&A features that we have today are a little bit different than the others, so I'm gonna have to scrub back to find a lot of the questions, although April has listed them here, but if we want to post them up in video. But Michael's asking, let me get to it here just a minute. Oh, I'm all over the map. There it is. Can you elaborate on virtual services in a side hustle? Virtual services are like side hustles. A lot of people who do their side hustle provide virtual services. So they provide writing. Writing would be a virtual service where you're doing writing, but you're working virtually. You're not working in the office. Executive assistants or designers, creative types, editors, video editors, podcast editors, all sorts of people can do virtual services. And if you're doing it for you, so the I guess the way that you look at it is, if you start to reach out to people and say, I'm available as a podcast editor, and you market yourself, that's a side hustle. If you go and position and post your resume on Upwork and somebody comes to you and says, I'm looking for a podcast host or a podcast editor, I see that you do it, are you interested in doing mine? Then you're really working in the gig economy. Do you see the subtle difference? I mean, so there's a little bit of crossover between the two, but when you're actively marketing yourself, when you're actively out there seeking and building a following, that's what a side hustle is. And side hustle, of course, goes into many, many other things. Affiliate marketing, there's just a lot of different avenues that side hustles can go on. Wherever you kind of find an opportunity and you build on that opportunity yourself.
All right. Do you want me to? You read the bottom one. Do you want me to read the others for you?
Sure, you can read them out.
Okay. When looking for a job, should you better look for a new opportunity or start something on your own?
Well, that is the $64,000 question. I'm dating myself again with that term, but and you know what? I'm actually going to fold that into this question from Erica, who's asking, would it be worth hiring a career coach? What I said right off the top about this is an opportunity to hit the reset button, to rethink about what employment and what work is. My dad's generation, our parents' generation, looked at employment very differently than baby boomers, and baby boomers look at employment very differently than do millennials. We each have a different kind of construct of what jobs are and what it means. And as I was preparing this, I really, it struck me very hard that we typically, at least baby boomers growing up, we looked for opportunities, and then we tried to see if our skills fit those opportunities. And I don't think that necessarily millennials think quite the same way. I believe that they do a lot more of what's important to them, and so they look for jobs that are going to fulfill them. I don't think every age demographic does that. I think that as a baby boomer, hiring a career coach would probably be a terrific idea, because just expressing, just recognizing that you want to step outside of yourself and reevaluate the process would be, I think, a really healthy thing to do. And I know we've got probably some career coaches on here that are all going, woo, Steve.
We have Marion and we have Jerry.
So there's a few of them. But the bottom line is, I think that that's a great process. And even if you don't do it officially, doing it iteratively with your friends and family or trusted, people that are in your inner circle that you trust, I think that that's a terrific idea to go through that. And it speaks to the question of whether or not you should be looking for a job or starting a side hustle. Figure out what your why is. I know I sound like I should be burning incense, but once you figure out what your why is, that's going to inform you and help you make that a really good decision as you go along.
Your incense. so funny. I don't know what that means.
I have no idea. I have no idea.
Are you sure you haven't had some Guinness today?
It's just I am so done with our podcast this week. I talk about becoming a digital nomad because I'm just jonesing so much to get out of Ladner and to see the rest of the world. I'm probably on the edge of a breakdown of some sort.
It's okay. It's okay. All right. So Bob's asking, why no recommendations on your LinkedIn profile? It's okay. Oh, good.
Yeah, Bob is asking. Go ahead.
Why no recommendations on your LinkedIn profile? Sorry.
On mine? Is he specifically referring to mine?
I don't know. I thought he was talking about something in the video. Oh gosh.
Oh, I don't. Oh, maybe I never really sought recommendation. As I said, don't do as I say, not as I do. Yeah. My LinkedIn profile is not great, but no.
You want to make sure you fill out your LinkedIn profile from top to bottom and use every resource that's available on there. So like your skill set there, you can have 50 choices of skill set. Make sure that you choose that because that helps with search. Recommendations are great. It's a validation of what you do. And I would encourage you, it's actually sometimes easier to ask for a recommendation on your LinkedIn profile than it is to ask a client sometimes for people. So I would absolutely try to get recommendations on your profile. It just validates you. It's an online resume.
And that's something that you can seek, right? You can go and you can reach out to people and ask for recommendations. Am I correct on that assumption?
You can, but you also, I mean, you want to do it the right way. I'm sure this has all happened to everybody. People are like, "Hey, will you give me a recommendation and I'll give you one back." It's kind of like I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine. I think the more you want to look for recommendations that are of true value that you can. It's like social proof of what the work that you've done. So yeah, I think you absolutely want to make sure that if you finish a job or if you had a really great experience and you want to give somebody a recommendation, that's awesome. The thing too about recommendations is that you actually have to approve it before it goes on your profile. So if you don't like what they say, or you're not comfortable with it. But I think recommendations are an important part. Maybe he's talking about your profile.
I think he's specifically talking about mine. And what I will say to defend myself on this is LinkedIn has never been a big part of my business of me. My business doesn't come from LinkedIn because I'm not typically available to hire for anything. And I'm not, and people who I'm hiring, I'm finding through other resources. So I have, as I said, short-shifted LinkedIn as a network.
Yours. I should spend time updating yours and do a training on how to update it.
Yeah, well, I just asked Liz to update my profile picture or my masthead. She said, "Why does it need to be done?" I said, "Because I did it." So,
there you go.
But yeah, so I've never really sought work on it because it's because my business is a side hustle. You could tell by how excited I got about teaching people about that aspect of it, that I've always gone out and marketed myself to the marketplace through other social channels, primarily through YouTube.
But at the same time, just from a different perspective, even though you're in an online business, you could get speaking engagements through there. Like I know when it opens up like that. So it's not just, any type, if you own your own business or if you're looking for work, your LinkedIn profile can be a huge benefit to you, no matter what.
And back when I used to be an active speaker, I got most of my speaking gigs through an agency that I worked for.
Right.
But for example, the next generation along were active speakers. I know my friend Brian Fanzo, who was a really active speaker just pre-pandemic. Brian said that he got 90% of his speaking gigs through LinkedIn. So those things have changed. The traditional way I did it was with an agency. He's now doing it through the social networking site of LinkedIn. So that's totally valid.
The other thing too is that, I think one of the things that people miss in kind of hunting for a job in LinkedIn, you could have videos, you could create a video and add it to your profile, which puts another human element to your profile when recruiters are looking at it. There's so much that you can do to set yourself apart from, the competition. You just have to get a little creative, but taking advantage of filling out the whole thing is really key that people miss. They don't fill out the whole thing. They fill out parts of it. But if you take the time, and it does take time, but it's well worth it. It's well worth it.
Robert asks a great question that I know a lot of people wonder about. They wonder about brushing up their skills before they start going back in. He says, I just retired, thinking of getting back into the workforce and wondering if there's any programs or software that I should brush up on. And I'm going to throw this to the community, especially to the career coaches and the recruiters out there, to talk about that, because my initial reaction, and I might be wrong, so that's why I want you guys to respond. My initial reaction is no. There isn't anything specific. I think you have to show that you aren't intimidated by any technology, that if you're showing that you're comfortable on the social platforms, communicating on LinkedIn, if you're comfortable in when they say time, we want to interview you, here's the Zoom link, you don't panic and freak out and that you show that you are comfortable with the modern tools that we're using. I think that people are going to be willing and recognize that there's a very good chance that they have to train all of their employees. Some companies use Slack, other ones use Microsoft Teams. There's just, we're talking about internal communications. They know that they have to onboard people and show them their systems. Now, if you're in a specific industry, if you were a 3D illustrator and you needed, there was a certain tool that you needed to use, it's a different story. But I think generally it's being just generally technically showing a competence, and not a lot of people do mea culpas. They say, I don't really, it's been a long time, but I did use Microsoft Word, that sort of thing. I let them worry about which applications, and the odd time it might bite you, but I think for the most part, I think I wouldn't worry too much about it. And
the other thing too is like Indeed and LinkedIn, though, once you put in your skills, they actually have these little certification things that you can do to kind of go through and get like a certificate that you have this skill set, but it also gives you recommendations too which is kind of a cool thing because it makes you, it validates some of your experience that you have that you can add to your resume.
Zenaida has an interesting question, one that I didn't know. I have two profiles. Can I have two profiles on LinkedIn? I have two very different careers that have evolved side by side. So would they be under the same name or would one be an alias? I guess that's the first question I have.
I wouldn't have two LinkedIn profiles.
It would be very confusing.
I would have one, and I would make sure that your headline identifies a little bit of both of your skill set, and then in your summary that you can write about both. And then I would also highlight both at underneath your summary of what you do, and then clearly list out each job company that you work for. Having two is too confusing because you come up twice in search, and I think it actually makes it harder for people to find you and find the profile that you want to get hired for or work for.
Isn't it interesting how the conversation that we've had today about finding a job has been a little bit in the questions and answers about the psychology in finding, kind of figuring out what you want to do, and a lot about the tool LinkedIn. People are really interested in LinkedIn, the tool, in this conversation. That's
right. Well, and yes, I'm in the chat. You can't have technically two LinkedIn profiles. However, you could trick the system with different email addresses. That's what some people do. And you can have a business page. Absolutely, you can have a business page. You can actually have multiple business pages attached to your personal LinkedIn profile, and that's probably actually, if they're your companies, I would go. I would have your personal that includes both your businesses, and then have two company pages that were separate that identify each brand. I
just want to do a quick shout out. I only met Jim by email. Jim, I'm going to say it, Tabasinski. I hope. Tabasinski. Jim hosts a website which is called Nifty 50, I think is the website.
I saw that in the note.
Yeah. It's in the shared note. So after you'll all be getting the shared note. But there was a few people that commented if we can offer advice for people over the age of 50, etc. Jim's entire site is dedicated to fighting ageism and supporting people over the age of 50 looking for employment and overcoming hurdles and developing the skills they need and getting the confidence they need to get that job and backfilling the things that they might have lost 30 years sitting in a cubicle when they have to come back out. I spent a lot of time pouring through his site, and it was an excellent resource for this demographic. So I just wanted to do a quick, a little bit of credit where credit is due. Actually, Jim and I have a meeting booked for tomorrow, so he can tell me whether or not I said his name right today. So we will see.
Awesome.
That brings me to the how are we doing for time? Yeah, about 10 minutes.
Yep.
So just to let everybody know what's going to happen now, the replay here is going to be available online for we'll still answer some more questions, so don't worry, I'm not wrapping things up. I just want to make sure that I cover this. The replay is going to be available for a week here on YouTube or on Facebook where you're watching it. After that, we take this replay and we archive it in our Webinar Wednesday archives with 163 other webinars, and there it is for the purpose for the use of our patrons. We are supported, as I said, through Patreon, and our patrons support us at $10 a month, and for that they get a variety of perks. The most important of which is access to all of these replays. Each week here on Dottotech, we do a training of this caliber. Some are better, some are worse, but we always try and without any commercial interest or any commercial attachment, try and teach you some aspect of productivity, of content creation, or of online marketing. And we stepped a little bit aside, a little bit of far afield today, talking a little bit about careers. But that is what Webinar Wednesday is all about. So thank you all for the support of our patrons. Any new patrons, welcome aboard. I hope that I hope to welcome a few new ones today. And now let's get back to our questions and our Q&A.
So what are your thoughts about fake job postings?
Somebody posted, yeah. They posted that's a problem here in Vancouver. Not being in the job market looking for jobs, I didn't even know that they were. And are they there as a scam to try and get access, to try and steal information? There's got to be a purpose behind it. Do you know what it is, April?
No, I don't. I think that people collect information. Absolutely. Like you always have to be mindful. One of the things I do want to say is that I have in the past year, I've been doing some copywriting stuff on the side, and I've been writing a lot of job postings for businesses. And there's probably 12 different companies that I've written job postings for over the course of the year. And one of the things that they have said is that many of them have had less success on LinkedIn in finding the right people as opposed to the people on Indeed. And here's why. A lot of people use that easy apply button, and it's a rote thing. They go down and down and down, and they hit easy apply. So clearly, they have the resume reader, which is one thing. But the one thing you want to make sure is when you are applying for a position, make sure that you, in your cover letter, clearly have read the job description, because that's one thing that if you haven't read the job description, you're already nullified if it gets to the front of a desk where somebody's reading it, because they have, and that's a commonality complaint from these companies, is that people are they're sending out 100 resumes, but there's no personalization to it, where they really don't feel like they're the right fit because they haven't even read the job description. They have everything else from just sending out mass resumes. So just something to keep in mind that I thought I would share.
And that is disturbing to me, because that is a selfish activity. If you are just spamming people with your resume and then expecting that they're going to filter through and wasting their time,
sure,
when it's not a job that you've even bothered to really look to see if it's appropriate for you, well, shame on you. You're wasting somebody else's time. You're costing cycles, and you're not. I mean, it's just karma is going to bite you in the ass, as far as I'm concerned. So,
right. And what's interesting though is that the employers, so kind of that's their take on it, right? But what was interesting on the other side of it, the flip side of it, was that. And I saw somebody just posted about a lot of job postings are vague, and you're absolutely right. And so one of the reasons that I helped them write their job description was that we made sure that if people were looking at that description, they knew exactly what the office environment was, what the position entailed, what kind of work, if there was travel, and like what not only the perks were, but like long-term growth, right? For the people that were working there, that if you want to come work here, this is what you're coming to. It's a fast-paced environment. And you're right. You're absolutely right. A lot of companies don't clearly define what they're looking for. So it's kind of this like, it's
laziness on both sides.
It's hard. Yeah.
I like this question from Carol. How do you figure out what you want to do? which is so number one is, I think all of our life and career coaches here would say we are trained to help you do that. So I think that's one thing. But the reason that this caught my attention as we were working through here today is for upcoming webinars, I'm constantly gathering ideas and data. And one of the upcoming webinars that I'm planning on doing is talking to people about how they decide what they want to do as a side hustle, a niche of that. But it's so difficult to figure out exactly, what that business opportunity is. You have the desire to, say, be entrepreneurial. You've got a set of skills, but figuring out where those skills fit the opportunity, etc. That's a really interesting journey, and I'm fascinated by it because it's so important that you make the right decisions early on. Now, typically speaking, you're still going to end up pivoting and moving around, and it's going to morph from what you originally think, but having the right momentum and making those, making good decisions at the beginning, really, I think is something that's really worth considering exactly the best way to do it. So I'm going to say, make sure you stay on our mail list and keep your eye open, because we are planning to cover that to some extent here on Webinar Wednesday coming up. And I don't know when, because I haven't got all the research done yet. But as well, I would say definitely embrace the idea of bringing a professional in to help you make that decision.
I think we're always evolving, aren't we, though, and changing our mind about what we want to do? I don't know. I am. But I'm a little shiny penny, so that could be part of the problem.
That's it. Well, that's it. There's a difference between being flexible and in modifying and evolving and being distracted. Which I am. Yeah, we often do, for sure. How are we doing? It looks like we've got. Are there some other questions we should answer here right now, or do you think we've done a really good job?
No, just there's I'm reading. So Dan was saying too many companies want PhD employees at kindergarten salaries.
Yeah, saying that. Yeah, that's it's interesting. There's a lot of when I was doing the research, a lot of businesses now are, when we look at the gig economy, we're typically looking at being a complete freelancer and just getting employment from one company. Companies internally, somebody commented that we're like the iceberg. The vast majority of the jobs are never posted in public because they're posted internally, or they're done through recommendations within the company, and they never actually get to the public. But those companies are often now doing what they call gig placements within the company. We used to call it being seconded, I think, where you are working in one area of the company and you're sent over on a project in another area of the company. And that's still a big thing, and it's a great way to develop new skills. But they actually have a term for it when you're moving within the company or you're being hired to do something, where they're often hiring people that don't have all of the qualifications for the job. But because it's a gig job, because it's temporary, they can hire outside of the official framework. And they call these stretch assignments, where they take somebody that they think has the potential, and the business and the individual benefits from this fact that they're given an opportunity to learn and to develop additional skills. And maybe they grow into the job, but they aren't permanently placed there, so they can't cause long-term damage. I just thought that was a really interesting management philosophy that as I was reading about all of this, I saw in is evolving. So there's a complete aside. I when the topic's not right in my sweet spot, I get an opportunity to read a lot of different ideas as I'm preparing these webinars.
It's always interesting though, right? Like, it's interesting to learn new things that
it's fascinating, and it's also important to us. So we keep your eye open. As soon as the webinar is over, we'll be sending out the shared note that I worked from as we do each week. It's got a lot of the links that we talked about to the different resources. April has got a great resource in there. That's a resume builder that can help you with that resume, to write it for the machine, to write it for the person, and to write it for yourself, as one of our people commented. So that'll be coming to you in the next about an hour. We send it out, and
at 6 o'clock. Yep.
Okay. Oh, this is it. Actually, let me just take a look, because somebody answered one of our questions. Rod said, "Fake job openings. Some fake Some post fake openings to create their own database of resumes, thus months, years later, to refuse recruiter payments. Oh, so they're actually kind of building their own database, hoping that you'll forget, or that they kind of set it against as an investment for the future. They're harvesting names actually for the job, but it's not available right now. It's a hedge against the future. Interesting. Okay, April, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Have a great.
I didn't tell everybody what's coming up next week. Next week we got an exciting one. Next week we got an exciting one.
Foundational Friday too.
Sorry. Oh yeah, we should tell them about financial. Next week, Evernote's new close, refreshed and renewed. I've been working hard on Evernote. We are going to ultimately release a new course on Evernote. A refreshed
supposed
course.
To be close.
Did I spell it right?
No.
I spelled it right.
Close. Close.
Oh, coughs. I said coughs. Close. Never mind. We'll have to fix that. Don't judge me.
It's okay. I know you've had
really having trouble holding it together today. We're going to be talking about Evernote next week. We're going to look at Evernote's new clothes. It's like the Emperor's new clothes. It's a play on words, but we're going to be looking because Evernote's got a whole new look about it, and we're going to be taking a look at it and talking about Evernote next week on the big webinar. And coming up on Friday, we have our new feature, which is Foundational Fridays. It is free till the end of this month, and starting next month, we're actually going to be charging for it. But this week, we're going to be talking about buying a domain and setting up and what to consider if your Foundational Fridays is to teach the basic business principles behind online marketing. And one of the most important parts of your business is your website. So, and we often go we have to buy a website domain, and it's something that we do once or twice in our life. So I'm going to take you through the process of buying a domain, what to look for. The web hosting companies do all of these upsells and scare tactics to get you buy all these features that you may or may not want. And then once you've done that, you have to land that website somewhere. So we're going to talk about best practices and best principles to look for in finding your web hosts. So some good foundational principles coming up this Friday. April will drop the link in for Foundational Fridays. That's at a different time. It's 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. We do that webinar. And the reason we do that is so that Liz can teach the odd one as well. All right. It is a wrap. April, thank you so much. Thanks, everybody. Guys. You guys were awesome as usual. Happy St. Patrick's Day, one and all. Till next time, have fun storming the castle.